Picture this. You're asked to just stand still. That's it. Back straight, chin level, shoulders back, feet together. Sounds easy, right? Now try holding that position for hours, without moving an inch, while your body is already wrecked from hours upon hours of dance practice beforehand. For us, that's just something to imagine. But for Jimin, the BTS member we've always known as the graceful figure on stage whose movements look effortless, that's a reality he's lived through again and again. And today, we're breaking it all down, piece by piece, showing what Park Jimin's training journey has really looked like, from a cramped trainee dorm room to a grueling military camp. And it turns out to be far heavier than we ever imagined. If you're wondering why this video has such a dramatic title, stick around until the end, because everything we cover today is grounded in real reporting. Let's get into it. Before he became known worldwide as one of K-pop's finest dancers, Jimin had to go through a training period that was far from comfortable. He joined Big Hit Entertainment, now known as HYB, and was given roughly just 1 year to train before he was ultimately chosen to debut with BTS. 1 year. That's an incredibly short window compared to many other trainees in the Korean entertainment industry, who often spend 3 to 5 years preparing before debut. That meant every single day Jimin had needed to be used to the absolute maximum. And that meant sacrificing one of the most basic human needs, sleep. According to reports, Jimin's training schedule as a trainee was so tight and packed that he could only rest for about 2 hours a day. Practice would reportedly run until 4 in the morning, and he'd have to be back up and heading to school by 6. That leaves less than 2 hours between when he'd lie down to sleep and when he'd have to wake up again to start a new day, one that was also packed with more training. Let's actually do the math together. 2 hours of sleep every single day for months on end. For adults, the ideal amount of sleep sits somewhere between 7 and 9 hours. Jimin, who was still a teenager at the time with a body still growing and developing, had to survive on roughly a quarter of that. This isn't a sugar-coated motivational story. It's a real glimpse into just how brutal the K-pop trainee system can be, especially for those given such a limited window to prepare. What makes this story even more striking is the fact that this kind of grueling effort never came with any guarantee. In the trainee world, there's no promise of a payoff. You could train relentlessly for years and still never make the final debut lineup. That's what made the pressure Jimin felt even heavier, because on top of the physical exhaustion, there was also the constant uncertainty hanging over every single practice session about whether it would even lead anywhere. Interestingly, despite all those time constraints, Jimin was known as someone remarkably persistent. He's said to have deeply admired senior singers and dancers like Rain and Taeyong from Big Bang, both known for their exceptional stage presence and performance quality. That admiration is believed to have been one of the things that kept pushing him to keep training even when his body was already running on empty. And in the end, that hard work paid off. Jimin became the final member to join BTS's lineup, completing the group of 7 that the world now knows so well. But as we'll get into in the next segment, the road to that point turned out to be even more dramatic than we might think. Here's a fact that might not be widely known among newer fans. Despite working himself to the bone day and night to sharpen his dancing, Jimin once admitted on a TV show that he almost didn't debut with BTS at all. That confession came during an appearance on the show Please Take Care My Refrigerator Back in 2017. There, Jimin openly shared that the reason was his basic dance foundation at the time, which was considered different from the style needed to become a K-pop idol. Something we now consider his most defining strength, his dancing, was once actually the very thing that nearly cost him his dream. Sit with that for a second. The person praised today as one of the most iconic dancers in K-pop history, whose movements are regularly dissected and admired by professional dance critics, was once at a point where even he himself doubted his own ability. He openly admitted that he almost didn't debut because he felt his dancing simply wasn't good enough to meet the standard required. This fact matters, because it shows that Jimin's journey toward mastery wasn't something instant or innate. There was a very human process of falling down and getting back up behind it. There was doubt, there was a lack of self-confidence, and there was a moment where he himself nearly gave up on the standard he'd set for himself. What's remarkable is that instead of letting that doubt stop him, Jimin used it as fuel to train even harder. And we can see the results today. where his name is now synonymous with world-class dance quality. In fact, in one of BTS's dance practice videos released on the Run BTS channel, Jimin received overwhelming praise and was even called a genius, sparking heated discussion across social media platforms. This proves one thing. What we see as perfection on stage today is actually the result of thousands of hours of practice, built on a foundation of self-doubt that he managed to overcome. If the previous segment tugged at your heartstrings, this one might make you hold your breath. Jimin once revealed that he frequently fainted during dance practice, particularly around the period when the song Blood, Sweat, and Tears was being produced. This fact came to light after the release of the official book, Wings, concept book. In it, Jimin opened up honestly about the enormous pressure he felt while living life as a top idol, especially as BTS's popularity began expanding into international markets and the demands on his performance grew even higher. He also shared the process behind his solo track, Lie, a song whose lyrics and concept reflect a fairly deep inner struggle. Notably, during that period, Jimin admitted he was on an extremely strict diet. Now let's connect the dots. A strict diet, combined with an intense dance practice schedule, combined with the mental pressure of being a top-tier idol, is a combination that would be incredibly heavy for any human body to endure. It's no surprise that his body eventually sent out emergency signals in the form of repeated fainting. This is a real look at the darker side of the entertainment industry that rarely makes it to the surface. Behind choreography that looks smooth and full of energy on stage, there's a human body being pushed to its absolute limit, sometimes even past it. What deserves credit here is Jimin's courage in being open about this. Instead of hiding the struggles he faced to maintain a perfect idol image, he chose to be honest through the group's official book. That gave fans room to understand that behind the glittering stage, there's a very real physical and mental struggle happening. This story is also an important reminder for all of us, especially younger generations who look up to public figures, that what we see on the surface doesn't always reflect what's actually happening behind the scenes. Hard work matters, but physical and mental health always need to come first, something the Korean entertainment industry itself seems to be waking up to more, as more idols have started speaking openly about their mental and physical health. Now we get to the part directly tied to this video's title, about how posture turned out to be no small matter for a performer at Jimin's level. As a performer with an extremely high intensity of physical movement, Jimin is considered prone to injury, especially when proper warm-up and consistent physical conditioning aren't in place. Several health reports have highlighted that Jimin has dealt with muscle injuries, with the most vulnerable areas being large muscle groups like the thighs, calves, back, and neck. That makes sense when you think about it more deeply. The neck and back muscles support the body's main vertical axis, including the spine. How someone holds their posture in everyday life, whether sitting, standing, sleeping, or walking, significantly affects the condition of these muscles. Even ordinary people who sit at a desk all day can develop back pain. So imagine the toll on a professional dancer whose body is required to perform extreme movements repeatedly over long stretches of time. The muscle injuries Jimin has experienced, according to circulating health analyses, can result from insufficient warm-up before practice or before performing on stage. They can also stem from incorrect movement technique, or from continuous strain and pulling that leads to tissue damage over time. Poor everyday posture is also cited as a potential trigger for neck and back muscle injuries like these. This is where we start to understand why something as seemingly simple as standing with perfect posture could feel like a nightmare for someone like Jimin. Not because he doesn't know how. Quite the opposite, actually, he knows exactly how important proper posture is. But when the muscles supporting the body have already endured chronic fatigue, repeated injury, and years of strain, holding a perfectly upright position for an extended period stops being just a matter of discipline. It becomes a matter of enduring pain that the audience never sees. This also explains why health teams and physical trainers typically place such heavy emphasis on regular stretching for performers like Jimin. If someone is required to stand or sit for long periods, it's recommended they stretch every few minutes and shift positions when possible to reduce the risk of more serious muscle pain. So the next time you see Jimin standing perfectly straight on stage, shoulders relaxed, and chin confidently raised, What you're actually witnessing is the result of years of training to push through physical pain that has quietly become part of his everyday reality. To keep his physical performance sharp amid such a high risk of injury, Jimin reportedly follows a fairly serious fitness routine, one of which includes CrossFit training. One of the main focuses of his training program is strengthening his core muscles, not purely for aesthetic reasons, but because core strength plays a major role in maintaining posture, supporting the spine, and preserving balance and stability, and even affects breathing control while dancing and singing simultaneously on stage. Jimin's core training reportedly includes movements like pike push-ups, jumping jacks, leg raises, and various push-up variations. Interestingly, these movements don't appear to directly target the core, but they indirectly force the core muscles to stay engaged throughout the entire movement. Ideally, core training like this is done 2 to 3 times a week, with at least 48 hours of recovery time between sessions so the muscles have a chance to repair themselves. This is a fairly scientific and measured approach to training, far from anything haphazard. What makes this even more compelling is that this kind of physical training isn't just a routine fitness habit. For Jimin, it's a long-term investment aimed at preventing the injuries he's already experienced from happening again, while also making sure his body stays capable of executing the demanding choreography that has become his signature on stage. Cardio training is also cited as an important part of maintaining his overall fitness, especially given that BTS's concerts and stage performances are known for their high intensity, requiring incredible stamina to sustain hours of performance. All of this shows that behind a performance that looks effortless on stage, there's careful calculation around muscle strength, recovery, and injury risk management, carried out consistently over time. And now we arrive at what might be the segment most relevant to this video's title, about what it actually feels like when standing with perfect posture turns into a nightmare. At the end of 2024, the public was caught off guard by news that Jimin had reportedly been promoted within an elite unit while completing his mandatory military service, an obligation every able-bodied South Korean man must fulfill, top idols included. That news reflected the remarkable dedication he showed throughout his time at training camp. We all know military training is synonymous with extreme discipline, and one of its hallmarks is the requirement to hold perfect posture for extended periods, something very different from the kind of discipline he'd built as a performer. Picture the contrast. In the entertainment world, perfect posture is a tool of expression, something carried out while moving dynamically to music, full of emotion and character. But in the military world, perfect posture is a symbol of obedience and endurance, held while standing completely still, with no music, no cheering crowd, just silence and firm instructions from a drill instructor. For a body that's spent years accustomed to dynamic, expressive movement as a professional dancer, adapting to the static discipline of military life is naturally a challenge of its own. Muscles that had been trained for explosive, fluid movement are suddenly required to hold rigid positions for long stretches with zero room for compromise. Add to that his history of back and neck muscle injuries that we discussed earlier, and it's not hard to imagine just how physically demanding this military training must have been for Jimin. Standing with perfect posture, something that might look simple to everyone else, could genuinely feel like a nightmare for a body already carrying so much accumulated strain from over a decade in the industry. Still, what deserves real credit is that despite all these challenges, Jimin showed a level of dedication strong enough to be formally recognized within the military structure, an achievement that no doubt made fans around the world incredibly proud of his perseverance. If we take a step back and look at everything we've covered today, from his trainee days running on barely any sleep, to the self-doubt that nearly cost him his debut, to a body that fainted repeatedly under the pressure of training, to the muscle injuries that have followed him throughout his career, all the way to the physical and mental challenges he faced at military camp, we get a much fuller picture of who Park Jimin actually is. He's not just a pretty face with dance moves that look flawless on stage. Behind all of that is a very real physical and mental struggle, one most of us probably never even considered as we watch the polished end result through a screen or from a concert crowd. This story is also an important reminder for all of us that behind every bit of perfection we witness in the entertainment world, there's a long process filled with setbacks, doubt, pain, and consistent hard work. The standards of perfection we demand from idols often come at a very steep cost to their physical and mental well-being. So the next time you see Jimin standing tall with perfect posture on stage, remember that behind that effortless-looking pose are thousands of hours of practice, injuries he's had to push through, sleep he's had to sacrifice, and remarkable discipline built over years of his career. And that's the long journey behind Jimin's training that you might not have fully known about until now. If any part of this moved you or left you in awe of his perseverance, drop a comment below and let us know which part hit you the hardest. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with fellow ARMYs who haven't heard this story yet, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on more content like this about the world of K-pop. See you in the next video, and thanks so much for watching all the way through.